Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. Well, today we're going to talk about how to release a fish. You know, through the last several decades, each period of time, it becomes more and more a way of our fishing culture to catch and release fish rather than catch and keep them. And it's going to be different depending on the species that you go for. But if you're going to release them, your goal is, if you're releasing that fish, is to let it live, to let somebody else or even yourself catch it again at a later time. So how do you best assure that it's going to live? If you release that fish into the water and you see it swim away and you say, wow, it's good, it's going to live, well, you don't know. You don't know. Just because it swims away doesn't mean it has the greatest chance to live. And let me tell you a few things about what you can do to make sure you have a better chance of letting that fish survive. Number one, the least you handle it. In fact, they make nets now that are made out of rubber. In other words, it has rubber netting instead of nylon or some kind of cloth. And what this does is, if you net the fish, the rubber doesn't tend to wear its slime off. And the slime is where all its immune system is. It's where all its infection-fighting enzymes are to keep that fish alive. Once you handle it and you rub that slime off, you open it up to infection. The other thing that's really important for you to remember is if you can keep from bringing that fish out of the water. In other words, if you have a net and you're able with a pair of needle nose or something to be able to reach down and get that hook out of the fish while it's still in the water, in the net, it has the greatest chance of surviving. It has, they figure about an 82% chance of living. If you do that, okay, now let's say you pick that fish up. You hardly handle it, but you hold it up while you're trying to get the hook out, and that fish is exposed to the air for 30 seconds. If you do that and then let the fish go back and it swims away, it didn't get cut up bad or anything, its chances of survival are reduced to 60%. All right, now let's say you're really struggling to get the hook out, and you hold that fish out of the water for 1 minute, and then you put it back, that fish only has a 20% chance of living. Now, these numbers, you know that old saying, numbers, you can figure with numbers, but a lot of times you can use those numbers for whatever you're trying to prove. In this case, the temperature of the air, the temperature of the water, the species of fish that you're releasing, all these things can play a factor. But let's just say everything's the same. Those are the percentages of survival expectancy that you get in terms of how you handle the fish. The other thing that's really important is the less time you battle that fish in the water. In other words, the way you can battle it less in the water is to use heavier gear, heavier line that's not going to break so you can horse it in, a stiffer rod that you can bring it in. Now, that's not as much fun. You don't get to enjoy the battle like I talk about all the time, but you're giving that you're not stressing the fish as much. It's not going into the degrees of shock that any organism does when it's put under severe stress. And so all these things I think are important to remember. And again, if we're going to catch and release fish, we need to be able to release them in the safest possible way. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.